We look now at one of the most pressing questions in Middle Eastern affairs, one that carries both urgency and symbolism. Could Muslim troops be on the way to Gaza, and if so, what would that mean for the future of this territory that has endured so much devastation? The conflict has left Gaza in ruins, sparking global debates about the humanitarian crisis, political arrangements, and security strategies. Now, the idea of Muslim-majority nations deploying troops is entering the discussion, raising hopes for some and doubts for others. To understand this conversation, we must begin with context. The war in Gaza has stretched on with enormous human cost. Israeli leaders have insisted on maintaining a military presence in Gaza City and other areas even after combat operations subside. That declaration has drawn condemnation across the Muslim world, with 20 Arab and Muslim nations denouncing it as an unprecedented provocation. For these countries, Gaza's future cannot be shaped solely by Israeli security imperatives. Palestinians must be guaranteed dignity, sovereignty, and a chance to rebuild. But Gaza today is marked by devastation, homes destroyed, infrastructure collapsed, aid convoys blocked or restricted, hospitals overwhelmed, and nearly 2 million people living in uncertainty. This is the backdrop against which the notion of Muslim troops emerges. The central question is whether Muslim-majority states could form a coalition to provide security and stability in Gaza. The concept is not entirely new. After earlier wars in Gaza, similar suggestions were floated, sometimes involving Arab League forces or joint missions under United Nations oversight. None materialized, largely because of political divisions, security risks, and lack of consensus. Today, however, the humanitarian situation is so severe that leaders are re-examining options once considered impossible. Symbolically, Muslim troops would represent solidarity and protection. Operationally, they could help manage ceasefire zones, secure humanitarian corridors, and provide cover for reconstruction. What would be the key features of such a mission? First, its composition. Which countries would contribute soldiers? Egypt, sharing a border with Gaza, has the most direct stake but also the most to lose if dragged into a conflict with Israel or local militias. Jordan has experience in peacekeeping but faces domestic pressures on the Palestinian issue. Turkey, under an assertive foreign policy, might view leading a Muslim force as a chance to expand regional influence, though coordination with Israel would be fraught. Qatar, often acting as a mediator, could contribute funding and logistics but not a large military. Pakistan has been urged by Iran to step in, but its own domestic challenges make that a complicated prospect. Saudi Arabia could provide financial muscle and symbolic leadership, but troop deployments would carry political costs given its cautious stance on Israel and ongoing normalization talks. Each potential contributor faces dilemmas balancing domestic opinion, foreign relations, and security risks. Second, the mandate. Would this force operate under the United Nations, the Arab League, or the Organization of Islamic Cooperation? A UN mandate would bring international legitimacy but faces potential vetoes in the Security Council. An Arab League or OIC mandate would resonate with regional audiences but might not carry the same global authority. Without a clear mandate, the mission risks being perceived as illegitimate or even as an occupying force. Rules of engagement would be critical, defining whether troops could engage militarily, whether they would only guard aid convoys, or whether they would enforce ceasefire lines. Lack of clarity on this point has undermined similar missions in the past. Third, performance aspects. The mission would be judged on whether it actually stabilizes Gaza. Metrics would include reduction in violence, increased flow of humanitarian aid, reopening of schools and hospitals, and restoration of public services. Effective performance would require coordination with humanitarian agencies, transparent reporting, and ability to deter both Israeli incursions and local militant attacks. Failure on any of these fronts would erode credibility quickly. Troops would need strong logistical support, including supply chains for food, water, fuel, and medical supplies, as well as technology for surveillance and communications. In urban environments like Gaza City, training in crowd management and cultural sensitivity would be as important as military discipline. Design elements of the mission would include command structure and coordination mechanisms. Would there be a single lead nation or a joint command council? How would decisions be made in the event of disagreements among contributing countries? How would information be shared with Israel, which insists on retaining overall security control? Would there be liaison officers from the Palestinian Authority to ensure cooperation with local governance? These design questions determine whether the mission could function smoothly or collapse under internal friction. Unique selling points of a Muslim-led mission center on legitimacy. Palestinians might view troops from Muslim-majority nations more positively than Western forces, which are often associated with occupation. Such troops could bring cultural familiarity, shared language, and religious affinity, helping them integrate more effectively into local communities. Muslim nations could also finance the mission with oil wealth and diaspora contributions, reducing reliance on Western donors. Symbolically, the deployment would demonstrate Muslim unity at a time of fragmentation. Politically, it would allow Arab and Muslim leaders to respond to public demands for action while shaping Gaza's future in ways that reflect regional priorities rather than external dictates. But challenges loom large. Israel has repeatedly expressed opposition to foreign troop deployments in Gaza. Israeli leaders argue that they must retain freedom to act against Hamas and other militant groups, and they distrust foreign forces even if nominally peacekeepers. Militants inside Gaza might also resist, viewing foreign troops as interfering with local resistance. That could expose peacekeepers to attacks, making their mission perilous. The domestic political cost for governments contributing troops would be high if soldiers returned in coffins. No leader wants to risk public backlash at home for involvement in a conflict that may seem unwinnable. Despite these risks, the idea is not fading. That persistence reflects the desperation of the situation. International agencies warn of famine and epidemic. Families are displaced again and again. Hospitals run without electricity. In these conditions, even a symbolic deployment could boost morale and provide temporary relief. People in Gaza long for protection, for someone to enforce safe zones, to guarantee that aid trucks actually reach their destinations, to ensure children can attend school without fear. For them, the prospect of Muslim troops is not only about politics, it is about survival and hope. Regional dynamics play a major role in shaping these discussions. Egypt continues to host talks involving Israel, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and international mediators. Egypt also trains PA security forces in preparation for possible redeployment in Gaza. Turkey pushes for stronger Muslim unity, casting itself as a defender of Palestinians. Qatar funds humanitarian projects and negotiates with Hamas. Saudi Arabia balances its role as guardian of Islamic interests with its pragmatic diplomacy toward Israel and the West. Iran, meanwhile, frames itself as the champion of armed resistance, urging Muslim nations to act decisively. Each of these actors views Gaza not just through humanitarian lenses but also through the prism of power, influence, and prestige. Western powers also weigh in. The United States is heavily invested in Israel's security and reluctant to endorse any plan that limits Israeli freedom of action. European governments, facing domestic debates over Gaza, encourage regional solutions but hesitate to commit troops themselves. Russia and China use the crisis to challenge Western influence, positioning themselves as allies of the Arab world while seeking footholds in Middle Eastern diplomacy. Against this backdrop, Muslim troops represent more than soldiers on the ground. They are symbols in a larger contest of narratives between West and East, North and South, power and resistance. Public opinion adds another layer. In Arab streets, anger at Gaza's devastation is intense. Demonstrations demand action, not just rhetoric. Social media amplifies calls for intervention. For governments, responding with troop deployments could satisfy public demand for bold measures. Yet at the same time, leaders fear the cost of entanglement. Sending troops to Gaza risks embroiling their countries in a volatile conflict with no clear endgame. Thus, many leaders prefer financial contributions, aid shipments, or diplomatic gestures over direct military engagement. The gap between public pressure and governmental caution remains wide. The humanitarian situation amplifies the urgency. Aid convoys are bottlenecked. Families live in overcrowded tents with little water. Diseases spread in refugee camps. Children suffer trauma that will last a lifetime. Every delay worsens the crisis. Muslim troops, in this context, are imagined as protectors who could ensure safe passage for aid, guard schools and hospitals, and deter looting or factional fighting. Their mere presence might deter aggressors and reassure civilians. For international aid groups, cooperating with culturally aligned troops could ease operations and improve security. Yet all of this hinges on political will that has so far remained elusive.